And this is a bigger turnout than we had anticipated, so we're a little crowded in here. But this is one of our chat times. We don't have a formal speaker, but it's just sharing of memories for some of the stations that have been, that are in the area. And I can see the connection to a lot of people that are here. Rosie was the one. Come on out here, Rosie. Out here. Oh, no. Here. She was the first one I contacted because several years ago, we did a training program and invited her to bring some of the things that her father had on the railroad. And Dale's here somewhere. His dad was on the railroad. And Joanne and Karen, they have area down by the King Ferry. They have lake area down by the King Ferry station. And let's see, some other connections. I hope are going to come out in some of the discussion that we have. And it's just a time to remember. And for those of us who weren't here during that time, it's for us to kind of become familiar with what did go on during that era. Did anyone here work on the railroad? Well, Sue May did a program with her kids, a musical program last year, and she and Maurice traveled down to see some of the Lackawanna spots. So those are Scranton.
Scranton. It was like on the railroad, but that's Scranton.
And so those are the pictures that they took along the way. And Dale, let's see, Jean, have you got some memories that you're going to share with us today too?
Forgot them all.
I don't believe it. So Jean has a lot of local history. So anybody can just chime in whenever they want. Is there anybody here that's for another reason? I mean, this was really just spur of the moment, and we're going to have to get Bruce Tracy or some of the other people that are really knowledgeable about these to come in and have a formal program sometime, if there's this much interest in just sharing memories. So we also have a one-room schoolhouse I hope you'll check out, and there's a guest book going around.
I don't know where it's supposed to go.
If you would, just sign that when you get time. Any other questions or things? Okay. Oh, Maureen?
Can we start the conversation by telling us how the railroad, where it started? There was kind of like two lines, right?
There was this.
On the lake down there, and then there's one in,
That was the
come out
short.
Auburn. Can we just kind of tell how that's, where it started in Auburn, where it ended up, and if somebody knows the stops? And same
Did the
thing on
map
that
help?
line down there, how, what year it started, and they know any of the stops and how it went?
Dale or Jean? Do you know, can you tell us about that? Anybody?
I can probably tell you a little bit about it. My father was an engineer on the railroad from 1941 until he retired. He was running the coal trains from Ithaca to Milliken Station when he retired. This is considered the Auburn branch here, and it went from Sayre to Auburn. It came at one time through Genoa. It used to be the something Southern Railroad, and that became part of the Lehigh Valley. It ran along Hugo Lake up to the salt mines, and then it went on to Milliken when they built Milliken Station. It went up to Aurora, where they dropped off coal for Wells College. And then it went on up all along Hugo Lake, all the way north to Beacon, or to Beacon Milling was up there. And veered to the right back to Auburn, and it also went over the end of the lake to Geneva. That was still part of the Auburn division. It also branched out in Freeville and went to Cortland and Canastota. But I think originally the Lehigh Valley up here, really in the boom times, was when they hauled coal to Lake Ontario and put the coal on barges and took it through the Great Lakes back years ago when they needed the coal in the area, and it was a real booming railroad at that time. That's more about all I can tell you about it this time. I know when I was a little boy, I used to love trains, and I used to on Saturdays, go down to Sarah or Ithaca and sneak on if there was no officials around and ride. I got to ride a steam engine one time from Moravia to Auburn when I was just a little kid. And my sister, Linda, she was scared to death of them. We tried to get her around once, but she started crying and she wouldn't go near the thing. I remember years ago, they used to run troop trains right through Moravia on the way to Camp Drum, it was at the time. And one time I was able to sneak on the engines when they stopped in Moravia on their way to Auburn, on the big engines with the Pullman cars, so I could get a ride in the cab on those. But I really, really enjoyed it. I have a model railroad at home that I mess around with off and on.
We've got some books on the short line, which is the one that went through Genoa too. And some of the information you might find there. And there's a map over here that shows some of the, where the railroads went and stuff like that. Can anybody else give Maurice a little information on where they went?
There's a timetable right there that tells some of the stops. And one of the stops was Sills Crossing. You know Sills Road over in Genoa?
Yes.
Yeah. I'm amazed that they stop so often. That they, you know.
Mostly
stop in
for
Genoa, stop in Sills.
mail and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, mail and milk.
Oh, they pick it up.
Farmers brought their milk down in the milk cans and their eggs. And I can,
Well,
yeah.
just to give you a little bit of idea of how long,
Yeah.
you could start out in Auburn at, this looks like it would be 6:52 in the morning. And going down through, you'd be at Merrifield at 7:20, Venice Center at 7:29, Genoa 7:40, Sills Crossing 7:45, North Lansing 7:50, finishing up in South Lansing by 8:05.
They must have had good breaks. Yeah.
Then there's another line, one along the west side of Owasco Lake, maybe that's out of our territory here, but,
What was that called, do you know?
I don't know. You can see still where the tracks
The
went,
tracks, yeah.
some places, yeah.
In the research that I've done for my course, concerts, the one thing that probably connects in with what you're talking about on the west side of Wasco Lake is at Casawasco where Ted Case lived. The only way to get down to his summer camp was by train or by boat. And often people like John Wayne and the stars at that time would take the train into Auburn to meet with him there. The other, Ted Case is the gentleman who put the sound to the talkies. And the other thing that I found fascinating with this railroad study that I did for my concert was that Ezra Cornell was a very important part of that because the students could come into Cornell on train. And so it was like, oh.
I came to Cornell on the train the first time
Yeah.
in '61.
Brought students and families into Cornell, right, on the train?
Yeah,
And not the two.
Not through here, but it was the Lehigh Valley.
Right, Lehigh Valley, right.
The main line of
the, right, yeah.
Not in the distant past, people kind of joked and said that Ithaca is served by the Leaky Valley Railroad and the Slow Hawk Airlines.
People talked about the coal trains going to Auburn, but they went beyond that. Went north of Auburn, clear up to Fairhaven, where there was a large coal trestle. And they would run their coal cars up on this trestle, which was adjacent to the water. And that way they could dump the coal right out of the bottom of the cars onto the boats to ship it around the Great Lakes. Our farm was between Auburn and Leechford, roughly. It was inside of the Lehigh Valley Railroad, and I can remember as a kid looking over there and see these long trains go through loaded with coal. They also made earlier they made a daily trip to milk stations. Our milk went to Troopsville, and they had a milk station there, and they'd pick up a car there, there was a milk station in Cato, and I believe there was another one north of that, near further.
Markville.
Markville, okay. Irish Station, I think, was on the Lehigh Valley. My great uncle owned a great deal of property at Irish Station. Farm supply store and this and that, up from there.
Mary, sounds like you've got some memories of the train.
Yeah, my dad had a grain elevators in Lavana a long time ago, back in the 30s. And I lived right near the train tracks. I have a lot of wonderful memories about it.
Also, the Rochester, Syracuse, and Eastern Trolley ran through Beachport and across the Lehigh Valley tracks there. And people that wanted to get to Fairhaven from this Rochester, Syracuse, and so on and so forth, I believe it ran all the way at least from Rome to Rochester anyway, with the trolley. And people that wanted to get to Fairhaven would take the trolley to Weedsport, change over to the Lehigh Valley train at Weedsport, and then go on to Fairhaven for their picnic, and then back again at night. That was quite there were huge crowds at the time that went through there to Fairhaven to various affairs, picnics, etc.
Venice Center had a big picnic. Phyllis is the town historian for the town of Venice. And that train station is still standing, right? Was that the location where it wasn't moved anymore?
And some things I just read recently where they put special excursion trains on when they had the Venice picnic, and from Auburn or Ithaca, wherever, and had a special price, like it was like 70 cents round trip from Ithaca and 50 cents round trip from Auburn.
I can tell two things about the short line. One is, my grandfather, Alfred Simpkin, maybe some of you are too young to remember him, but he, when he was still quite young, he became the manager of an outfit they called Scipio Patron Supply or something like that, and it operated where Al Kruger had a mill there, you know, Merrifield. And so I think maybe the railroad was going in, or was almost going, or something. I must have been going, or else they wouldn't have had an elevator there. And so that was that one connection. And the other thing was, my dad remembers, I guess he got freight coming in from the hardware store sometimes on the short line, and the closest place to get it would be over in Venice Center. But the trouble is, there was that hill there. So I thought it was a Model T or what, but the thing is, when you try to go up it had a gravity feed gas tank in the back, and if you go up a steep hill, the gas would never get to the engine. So the only way to do, you go up the hill, you had to back up the hill. So instead of going to Venice Center to get freight, they go all the way to oh, I forgot, a senior moment here, up, you know, well.
Mapleton?
Mapleton, yeah, that's it. They go all the way to Mapleton because the hill was too difficult. But the other thing about the short line, apparently, it was built really recently compared to the ones going along the lakes. And they said, well, the big advantage here is it's a little bit shorter. Auburn did it, it's just a little bit shorter, so they built the short line. But they had a little trouble financially. They get some money and then they build it away. And, well, we ran out of money, we got to raise some more capital, and they build a little more. And so they finally got it running. But they didn't have much money to buy a big locomotive. So the locomotive they had couldn't get up the hill down to Ithaca, so they had a trolley car bring the train up to the, so they got more flat, and then the little tiny locomotive would go the rest of the way. So that was kind of operating on the shoestring, and I guess it's not too surprising that it folded before the other ones did.
Well, in the town of Genoa, we had Atwater Station, and that one's not there anymore, I believe. Correct me, anybody, if I'm wrong. And then we had King Ferry Station, and that one, Joanne, is right next to.
Well, there's a barn Karen and I were talking about it. I don't think it's the station. From looking at the pictures, I think, you know, the barn that's there is probably some kind of storage that was connected
Freight house,
to
I
it.
think it is.
Yeah. So would the station have been like north of that?
It looks like it's
I-
right there.
Oh, really, instead?
To me.
I'm
I
not
thought the
sure.
barn had to do with the ferry more than I had to do with the train.
Could be. That's another,
I'll get
I
you some
think that's
pictures
where
of
they,
it.
they.
now, speaking of hills, Meryl and I were talking about, my father's memory of the railroad was driving a team of horses down to the Atwater Station to pick up, I think, feed maybe, I'm not sure, from Ithaca perhaps. But the horses wouldn't be good enough to carry a whole load up the hill, so he'd have to carry one load at a time, you know, carry it up the hill, unload, go back, get more, carry it up the hill, unload, go back. It took a long time to just get whatever they sent for up the hill.
And it was worse when it was muddy.
Oh, man, probably.
Yeah,
There were 2 mail stops for King Ferry per day, because my grandmother used to go down horse and buggy and pick it up down at King Ferry Station twice a day.
Well, those hills, just talking about it with the horses, I mean, that was amazing. If you drive down to Atwater Station, and you just wonder how they did it. And I think of it as a paved road,
Right.
you know.
I remember it as a little kid being afraid when my mother was driving up the hill when it was dirt road, because you could hear the gravel kind of kicking
You had that
away
book?
from the tires. Pretty steep.
This is all about what you're talking about. Put the tracer of it and it's signed. You can have that if you want it.
Oh, thanks, Dale. So, some of these, the books like this, we do a 2-week loan, if, like Maurice, if you wanted to borrow that or something, that's great. This, The Gangly Country Cousin. And this trace.
It's all about the Auburn branch. The whole, there's pictures of all the stations.
That looks so new, maybe, we still buy new ones.
Yeah, we could do that. But he's local, right, this Trace guy? So, from Auburn?
Yes.
So, thanks, Bill. So, anybody else got some memories around here? Pete, you wanna say anything?
Well, I haven't any memories because I don't remember the
Because you're
railroad.
so young.
But I did marry into the Smith family in Genoa, Smith's IGA. And of course, that was a store that started, my wife's great-grandfather started the store in 1890. And I have over here on the table the prior owner of the store, J.B. Young. And you spoke of the railroads in Genoa. There was two railroads at different times. In 1870, there was a railroad that came from Auburn through Genoa in 1870, and it went bankrupt in 1891. And then you spoke of the short line. The short line did come along in they started a movement in 1902, but it was 1907 before they got it actually going. And it ran from 1907 to about 1921, 1922. And then the trucks and the automobiles came in, and that sort of put the kibosh on traveling and freight and stuff. But the store used to I had some old invoices of where they bought things out of New York City. In New York City, we had a lot of invoices from Syracuse, Auburn, where they would use the Lehigh Valley, goes into Locke, and then they would bring the things over from Locke when the railroad wasn't operating, and by horse and wagon. And I also have some old invoices where things were brought in from Auburn, Freeville by stage, when the automobile and the railroads weren't in existence. So it's an old-time business, and some of the invoices are real interesting. A 5-gallon of oysters for $4.50. A ton of coal for $4.50. And the store did have, I got some invoices where the store did buy coal from Clearview, J.D. Atwater, J.D. Atwater's father, I think.
And Karen, is that the Atwater, that owns your house?
Across the street, I think.
Across the street.
I think that was the old Atwater place.
I don't. Atwaters lived in our home.
Pardon?
I think the Atwaters lived in our home, where Francis Fava was. Does that name ring a bell to anybody? Francis Fava? Francis Atwater?
Her maiden name was Atwater.
Yeah, so she did live in our home.
Anyways, the store did, I had a few invoices where the store did buy things, of course. One was Clearview coal from the Atwater Company for $4.50 a ton. They buy a lot of salt from Ludlow, and just various things. Few invoices out of Moravia, but most of the invoice stuff was Auburn, Syracuse, Ithaca, and New York City. But, and that was just from memory, from passed on down through the Smith family to me.
So at the end, we'll have some time to mingle around and look at the things. These are Pete's on this table here, Rosie's are over there. She can answer some more specific questions on some of those things. One of the things when we've done some of the historical homes around here, they talked about bringing in some of the really fancy woods to build the lumber by train. Do you know anything about that?
At Bealey House in Ledyard that is supposedly Sears house, not a Sears, but a pre-made house came in on the train down here in King Ferry, I think. That's what
Could have
they
been
said.
an Aladdin home too.
Yeah, that's what they say it
They were
was.
pre-cut homes. Very, very, very good homes.
And Bob Franklin says that, has told me that he remembers his father telling him that they went to King Ferry Station and brought the things up to build the house.
There's a Sears home in Aurora. It's the one that sets back up where Shackleton's the driveway is. There's a house that sits back up on the hill, belongs to Pat Donalds from Moravia. And her house, or Fosier, whatever, her house is a Sears house, and that was brought in pieces from Sears by train, unloaded in Aurora, and then built up on the hill.
Yeah, they use the horses to bring it up, right? And the trains.
Yeah.
That's what they, you forget about the horses, you gotta get the stuff down from the train up the hill.
Well, is Gunderson's, is that an original, that's an original station, right?
I believe it is, but I think it's been turned.
Yeah, they turned it, they turned
They
it.
turned it not too many years ago, like last 15, 20 years anyway.
Gay, do you have any other, in case people don't know it, Gay is very local and she writes articles for the Tribune. If she says anything, it's probably not going to be serious.
She probably made it up.
But can you think of anything that your grandmother remembered?
No, all she ever talked about was going out for the mail. Really.
And she was a postmaster?
No, she was a contract driver. That was just her job. Twice a day, get out and hook up the buggy and run down to King Ferry Station, pick up the mail and bring it back up.
Wow.
And one time when she went down, it was 1912, and my father walked across the lake from King Ferry Station. And I think that was the only time he said that you ever could have crossed the lake. And I don't think he was very old then, so he must have been a lot later than he was later in life.
Makes a difference.
Bobby, do you remember any stories?
Actually not in this area. My great aunt was a station master down in Chemung County, and she got talking on the telegraph with her future husband, who was the station master of Locke. And they met on, she took the train up and met him, and she ended up marrying him. I know she was at Aurora some, I'm not exactly sure when. Her son gave a lecture probably 10 years ago down in Locke Firehouse on his experience with the thing, and his mother became station master of Wyckoff Station. I noticed in there they call it a Wasco Lake Station or something like that. But his story was that the coal train would be coming back from Fairhaven, and they never took the garbage out. They just waited for the coal train to go by, and the Wyckoff Station had a upper story to it. They'd go up on the upper story and dump their trash into it and send it to Pennsylvania.
Rosie, what year do you think that was?
I couldn't tell you.
Because I lived there over the Wyckoff Station
Mhm.
for a while, and I don't know what year that was, but I
Well-
was probably maybe 14.
Yeah, this would have been Anna Witham would have
Yeah.
been her name.
Al was
And, yeah.
somebody we ought to talk to is,
I have his card at home. I haven't talked to him, and actually the last time I talked to him was 10 years ago when he gave the lecture, but I do have his card. His mother had a cottage down in, not sure what that, on the railroad track down there in Aurora, there across from the sewage treatment plant, about 6 up there's cottage, it was mother's house, cottage. And supposedly that is full of train memorabilia and all kinds of stuff from when he was down there. So,
Well, in here, they call the stop Willits.
Yes.
And when I was writing the article about the Long Point Hotel, the big question was, where did the train stop? Did it stop at Willits, which is the sheriff's cottage down the end of Hanaco in the beginning of Lake Road, or did it stop at Long Point? Because when Judy Jackson's, what was it, great-grandfather was killed, that train couldn't have been going very fast. So the question was always, was it stopped and then somehow he got run over when it was starting up or whatever, or was it going past when he got killed, slowing down, he stopped at Willits. And Mr. Bradley, the older gentleman down along Lake,
They own all that property there, near Long Point.
he says you can see the pier from the lake. But then the question was it a pier for the railroad or was it a pier for a ferry crossing? Because I guess the ferry, if it couldn't dock in one place, would dock somewhere else when it would come across. So it seems to be lost to history. I don't know how that works out.
The article that Gabe wrote for the, one of the more recent Tribunes, we still have some papers over here if you're interested. That was a really popular article. Somebody just mentioned it to me again the other day and how much they enjoyed that article on Long Point, so.
Did you ever talk to Chuck Jackson about any of that article?
I called him,
Is it-
but I didn't get a response. I talked to Judy a little bit. They weren't really too thrilled about putting some of that.
I talked to
I
him
mean, some of it
about that.
was just stuff that my father said. I mean, you know,
Yeah.
that he had to realize. He maintained that it was something fishy about that death.
And Chuck does too.
Well,
Because he says his great-great-grandfather
yeah,
was too sharp and knew the train too well
right, way
to
too well.
have died from that train, or have that train hit him.
He worked on that train for years
Yeah,
and years
yeah.
and years. I mean, he knew that schedule better than anybody in the world. Why would you end up getting killed by the train?
The Jacksons come from Kansas or someplace originally, I think, didn't they? And he started this, when he was, well, we're in the King Ferry Hotel. He started the story out in Kansas. When, where he was born and how his father they all come here, and he also told the story about, he was going to rent or buy a farm, his father was, Henry. And at the same time, the job for road superintendent came up for the town electric. and him and all, and then 43 years later, he retired from Ledger.
Well, the hotel at Long Point was built with lumber that was bought in by the railroad.
I remember seeing that building before it was torn down.
Yeah, I can too.
See, now all I ever saw was the turrets on the top of it. It was so overgrown down there at Long Point, and the railroad bed was overgrown and everything back when I was a kid, that you really couldn't, unless you were, you know, up to no good, you wouldn't go down in there, you know what I mean? And so we only saw from a fishing boat, and you know, and that's when my father started telling me about the history of it. But, and when I was looking up the pictures on what the gentleman's, that's got all those photographs in there.
Bill Heck.
Bill Heck. Oh, there you go, you picked it.
Gentlemen, I don't think so.
It shows standing from south of Long Point, looking toward Long Point, and the two pictures, one will show the tracks, and the next one shows it without the tracks on the bed. And you can barely see the hotel through the trees in the distance. So, in both pictures, so, it was there, you know, for quite some time, at least while the railroad was running.
That's another thing too, is that weren't there quite a few like hotels right along the lake where people could go and, I mean, they were kind of like outing, special places to just go eat.
Came over on the ferry, the Atwaters, there was a big hotel there. I'd like to see a picture of that, if anybody's got one.
And any of the photographs of local history that people have, Bill has been doing a lot of scanning here, and the website that you can, that Gay was talking about is, if you go to genoahistorical.org and click on historical images, the photos and things, you can see a lot of these. We're continually uploading them, so we have more done than are currently on there because Vicky's trying to label all of them with information about each one. So we like having Vicky and Bill scanning in those pictures and identifying those.
So there was a hotel at Water?
Yeah, there was. You know where the trailer park is now?
Yeah.
Right there.
There was a big
People
hotel.
came over
Cascade.
from Kidders on the ferry.
Cascade.
Had a
there was
big night out.
So the ferry
Now it
came
goes the other
into,
way, Big Daddy Kidders. Right?
the ferry came into where?
Well, I think it was originally from Kidders to King Ferry, but it stopped, you know, along the way. Before it went back to Kidders.
Well, another reason that this chat was here today was because Bob Franklin stopped in for Vicki and Bill to scan a few weeks ago, and he brought a picture of, who did I say, Bob Franklin?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Fitzgerald.
Bob Fitzgerald, sorry. It didn't sound very interesting. And he brought a picture of a train wreck where his grandfather was killed on it. And there's an article over here that tells about that. But that was a beautiful picture, and he had a ton of interest in this subject. So if I'm trying to collect names of people that we could have a speaker in to tell us a little more information. Is this Mr. Trice still alive?
Yeah, he's still alive.
Yes.
Yes, he is.
So he might do it?
I don't know, he has a friend that goes around with him.
I would
He has an
really,
awful lot of knowledge of it, so.
I would really try to get a hold of Bruce Tracy.
Bruce Tracy?
He belongs to a club, and they have these old putt-putt section cars that they've restored. And they have the club will get their section cars, and they'll go to a section of track somewhere and get permission to put them on the rails and ride them down the tracks, you know, on a Saturday or Sunday. I think he has a couple of those. But he contributed some things into this book that I gave you. You'll see his name in the back.
Okay, so he would be a great one. He's pretty local. I don't know if David Palmer does it too much, Bill. I know he just did one in Skaneateles.
Richard Palmer.
Richard Palmer. Oh, boy.
We can ask him.
And can anybody think of anyone else that is pretty knowledgeable on this subject.
What about the guy we had for the supper? We had, historical supper, we used to have those.
Mhm.
The guy, we was at the church in
In Genoa?
Genoa, and that guy really spent an hour and a half, 2 talking railroads.
Yeah.
I don't know that guy's name,
I have it, I can find that.
but he was very, he kept me entertained for quite a while that night.
Okay.
Marilyn,
Yeah.
my daughter, youngest daughter Kathy, she was to a meeting over last
Yeah.
Tuesday.
Okay.
With a fellow that had, a program over in Trumansburg for a couple hours, and he has got a model set up of Trumansburg, of the railroad. Where they dumped coal, all the stuff along there where they picked up, and she said that was quite interesting. He was a young fellow, and he had, she said they spent a couple hours on it over there.
Okay. So
I don't know what his name is or anything, but he's a young fellow that made this up and stuff.
So I can get her phone number or email from you then, Jean? Kathy's?
I can, yeah.
Okay.
That'd be interesting, because that's the main line from New York to Buffalo, of the Lehigh Valley,
Oh.
through Ithaca. And
It was the Black Diamond Railroad. they
The Black
used to call it.
Diamond, yeah.
Black Diamond.
Yeah.
And then they run the Black Diamond over on the one that come from Auburn down.
I don't think so, I think the Black Diamond
The
was
Black
strictly on the
Diamond
main
was the
line.
name of Lehigh Valley passenger
Yeah.
locomotives, didn't matter
Pretty
where they
sure.
went. But it was called the Black Diamond because of the coal they hauled to, they called them Black Diamonds. That's where they come up with the name.
But it was the passenger line,
But their passenger trains, they called the Black.
yeah.
I didn't drive, but I used to ride with a couple of fellows and stuff. We used to get up to what we call the pit stop, up just outside Auburn here, where it crossed there, where they got the, then they
Shoemaker.
jump over on the Shoemaker there. And we run over Sand Beach Road, go like hell down to 38 and stuff, see if we could beat the train in Moravia.
Yeah. My father-in-law, Joanne's father, I've heard him talk about the
Things they were
accident at Shoemaker's
Yeah.
Corners. Yes. Some, that would be kind of cool to
Those
research
wild
some of
crazy-
the accidents of local people had with those. One thing that amazed me when I was down in Pennsylvania was how, the noise. I mean, they were scary because they were just so huge and the wheels and making the noise. And
Well, when somebody mentioned it going through pasture, I can't help but think of the cows, like, what did they think of it? I'm amazed.
My dad said that there was a farm up near Canastota where the cows got out and the train was chasing them down the track for a couple of miles, and the farmer had to go round them up, and he says, well, I think you did a damn good job this time, they'll probably be giving buttermilk. I can tell you another funny story now that my dad's gone, I wouldn't dare tell it. He was running the coal train to Milliken Station out of Ithaca during duck season. And he had a shotgun on the locomotive. And they were going up through there with a 50-car train, and they had a big derail. And some of the cars rolled into the lake, and he knew he was going to get in trouble if they found out he had his shotgun on the engine. So David Banfield's wife, her father had a plumbing place in Ithaca, and he had a cottage up near Long Point, somewhere near where this accident happened. So he took the shotgun and ran up to his house and asked him if he'd keep it over the weekend. He'd come and get it before the brass got up there and investigated the accident. But they lost a whole bunch of cars in the lake. One conductor was riding in a caboose, and one of them got killed. He drowned in there.
Where did that happen?
Between Stewart Park and Milliken someplace. I'm not sure where it was.
Does anyone know anything about the hand cars that were on these tracks?
I might have seen one when I was going, I'm not sure.
I think that, Vic, maybe you can help out with this one. One of the museums, I'm looking at the wrong person, sorry. One of the museums, I think Sterling now has a hand car that you can
Really?
practice on it at the Sterling Museum. Were you at one of those meetings or maybe not?
We were down to Scranton, Steamtown, USA, and they have a lot of this stuff here, and they have a big museum there. And when they talk about the crashes, it was interesting. I mean, you don't really think about that, but, they have pictures down there of things like that and stories. And And that was quite phenomenal, and they've got the trains down there that you can still take some small rides or long rides on the trains, and it was, that's where we got a lot of the pictures, but
They
that's.
still have the turntable.
Yeah, and they still have the round
Operating
table, yeah,
turntable.
show how that worked, the roundhouse. So that's quite an interesting place if you're interested in trains.
Now, was Auburn had a roundhouse, right?
Yes, they did.
There's the remnants of one.
Still there.
Parts of it, where would that be?
You can see it on the arterial.
Just east of Elko. Yeah.
Right where the tracks cross the arterial by Elko.
Oh, okay, all right.
Crack telephone.
And what's amazing too is, with the Lackawanna, the railroad stations became so elegant. I mean, you go down to there now, and it's like, you can't believe they made this for a railroad station, but.
Remember the one in Geneva was quite ornate, I wanted to buy that a few times.
Now, they have some kind of little rides out of Geneva with the.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They do.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, they do, do that, and I think they have a stop and queue.
Where did the
When they do
Lackawanna
that.
go from the city, big city?
Binghamton,
Binghamton,
Elmira, in that area, along the southern tier.
Oh.
Have any of you ever been to the station in Utica where they run the Adirondack Railroad out of? There's a station that's
They do
beautiful
the
marble
trip
there
there.
too.
Oh, which is so unreal.
The seats were heated, where you sat and waited.
Ooh, wow.
If you wanted to look up where they have local train rides, is it Finger Lakes Railway?
Yes.
You know, like.
It comes into Auburn.
They don't
On
take
Geneva.
they don't take passengers anymore though, do they?
They have,
Oh, yeah.
they have
Yeah.
excursion things out of Geneva, like at Christmas time, where you can take your kids on and they'll have a Santa Claus come on the train.
I thought at Christmas time they stopped the passenger rails and just did commercial because there wasn't any money.
They cut
Well, they
back,
do
but they're
these,
still offering
these
some.
special
Oh, some?
excursion trips.
Oh.
The
They
same
do
as
like
they
the
have.
Polar Express,
Yeah.
stuff like that. But you seem to know a lot about,
Well, the Finger Lakes Railway is the freight side of the business, and then they have another side, not that they're not connected, and that's called the Finger Lakes Scenic Railway.
Right.
And that part of the business handles all the excursions.
And they're the same track.
Same tracks, yep, and same engines. And they have purchased passenger cars over the years and refurbed them, and most of them carry local names, like Cuba and Canandaigua and things like that. All the cities that they provide service to. They're still looking for a buyer for that organization, if anybody here's got extra time on their hands, so. They have cut back on the amount of excursions they do because freight pays the bills, obviously, and they're busier than they've ever been. So they're running trains now Saturdays, where before that wasn't as, didn't happen as often, so. But they do still do some excursions, and they list it on their website whenever they're gonna do one.
It was somewhere they're extending a track to somewhere remote. I forgot where.
Well,
They put some new yard tracks.
put some new yard tracks and supposedly an intermodal service facility in Auburn. And then there was talk that they were gonna start bringing garbage trains to Seneca Meadows. I'm not exactly sure where that stands, but
Why do they have to keep those old-fashioned box cars? And when you go into Geneva, you see miles of old-fashioned box cars. Finger Lakes Railway.
Yeah,
They had a mobile.
That's a
It's kind of
storage track.
unsightly.
yeah, that's a
They had a
storage
mobile,
truck.
yeah.
Storage
They wouldn't
track.
have a storage there anymore.
That's part of their issue, you know, when they bought the line from Conrail, it was not well kept, it was not well maintained. And Conrail had taken a lot of the infrastructure away, because if you don't want to maintain it, you'd make it go away. And now as they're offering far more individual customer-based service, they're getting more businesses to move to rail delivery, and they're increasing their amount of volume. So now they're finding that they've got to add tracks back, which is obviously good for anybody who likes railroads, so that's kind of where they're in the process now. They're doing 19,000 carloads a year now.
Are they connected with CSX?
They interchange with CSX in Solvay. They interchange with Norfolk Southern in Geneva. So,
Train traffic in Syracuse has gone great.
yeah.
I mean, I have to go past the fairgrounds every week to get flowers. And you'd see a train there once in a while, when the fair was going on. Now, you can't go past there without a couple of them going past. I mean, it's going crazy, the rail service into Syracuse.
Well, Warren
Sometimes
Buffett invested $2 billion in railroad.
Yeah, sometimes it just takes a little economic
Working.
downturn.
I'm sorry.
So they're using coal to run these trains?
No, these are diesel,
Oh,
electric
diesel, so we still
locomotives.
haven't gotten another fuel oil, huh?
There's no, we haven't gotten away
A
from it.
lot less than track.
They did, Finger Lakes did look at a genset engine though. They didn't purchase one. And that's when it runs on batteries and instead of diesel fuel.
One thing that's amazing though, they can carry an awful lot of tonnage for the oil they use. And it's amazing what they can, you know, a 100-car train, every car probably weighs 50 ton empty and it's got 100 ton in it if it's coal. And they can move that with like 4 engines hooked together and do it a heck of a lot cheaper. One time they tried to truck the coal into Milliken in case there was a railroad strike to see how they'd handle it. And it takes like 5 truckloads of tractor trailer loads to move 1 carload. And they were burning like 48 carloads a day or something, like railroad carloads. So it was damn near impossible to, they knew it wouldn't work.
Well, and I guess that's, you know, a good reason right there why they built those great big, like, the bridges over the mountains, because you're saving a lot of fuel or coal at that time if the road is somewhat straight as opposed to going up and down the mountains. We don't have to worry about that too much around here, but that's why they built those.
You can't take regular trains on this.
One time I rode on the main line from Sayre to Binghamton, I think it was, when my father was running that. And we had a 100-car train and 4 2,000 horsepower diesels pulling it. And it was on the Erie, Lackawanna, or whatever. It wasn't on the Lehigh rails. They used, and we were doing 74 mile an hour. And the BB Snow was the passenger train coming the other way. Man, I was sitting on the side where they passed, and I had the window open watching it, and the closer it got, you didn't even feel like you were doing 74 mile an hour. You felt like you were doing like 40. But when that thing went by the other way, you knew you were. Really sure. One thing they can't do when they have trains like that though is they can't stop them within a couple miles because it's too many tons to.
The western part of our country uses trains way more than we do around here. If you're ever in the west much, you see rail trains that are
Yes.
huge, tremendous amount of freight.
Yeah.
It's almost
Well, the
rewarding
passenger
to see that much
Yes,
freight being
exactly.
moved, that much, you know, how much resources you use to move that much freight. You get out in Oklahoma and out in those places, they're just huge trains. It's quite the deal, you sit
I
there in
think
the car.
these current locomotives they have today, I think the fuel tank will hold like 4,800 gallons. It's a lot.
Yeah.
But they go a long ways on that 4,800 gallons. I know just before my dad retired, they closed down much of the Ithaca yard except for the coal trains. They had to go to Milliken. And they didn't have a fuel facility there, so they contracted with Agway to bring in fuel oil to fill the locomotives. And they'd bring trucks in and just dump the whole truckloads in them there overnight. And that would run them a few days and they'd be down there doing it again. But another funny story is they were coming into Ithaca. You know how the tracks went down there along across State Street, and there's some wholesale brewery warehouses there. They crawl through there about 2 miles an hour, zigzagging through, and they could bring a lot of empties back. I mean, they might have had a mile-long train, and they're going across all those crossings really slow. And they were just getting into the yard, and Jerry Jones was the conductor. He lives in Ithaca. And he got on the radio and called my dad in the engine. He says, Kenny, we got to go back to State Street Crossing. We just tore the front end off a Cadillac up down there. They went back, and it was a doctor. And he said, you know, I was sitting there, and those cars were going by slowly. And he says, I fell asleep and let my foot off the brake, and he caught the caboose, and he just tore the whole front end off. But he used to You also used to get tickets from the Ithaca Police Department for holding up the crossings too long. They had a city ordinance that they weren't allowed to, the trains weren't allowed to close off the crossings for too long. And the city police used to come racing down in the yard and want to know where the engineer was, and Hank slapped him with a ticket. He says, I'd call Sarah to find out what I was supposed to do, and he said, oh, just tear the damn things up, there's nothing they can do about that.
That's kind of, if they want them to not hold up too long, that's kind of contrary to the idea of going slow so you're safer.
Yeah.
Mrs. Stein, do you have some memories?
Well, I've got this aside. I'm Janice Flurry.
Oh, okay.
But, no, only just what my dad used to talk about working on the old Lehigh Valley. I don't really have any good memories. But we did take a couple of those rides that you get on in Geneva and go to Cuba and back again. They were fun.
I remember stuff about the Lehigh Valley along the east side of Hugo Lake. If you're familiar with the area, if you go from Aurora, you go south, then you go on Lake Road, and where Lake Road goes away from the lake, that's Willett Station was there. I remember there was a small building there that said Willett on it. But anyway, south of that, well, north of there, along the lake, or along where the Long Point, Rocky Point, and all, there were buildings along there. People had summer places, but south of Willets, there was kind of like nothing. Except you go around quite a ways and somebody would have a little building up in the gully somewhere, but there wasn't any room for places there really. My grandfather bought some land just south of Willets in the middle 1930s, and the family built a cottage there, and it's still there. And then a little later on, Camp Gregory was started, but even when Camp Gregory started, there were still trains going by, and there was a place down south of there where there was somebody taking old railroad ties and made them into a little shelter. I don't know what they used for a roof, and my dad said, well, that was called it the hobo shack. A hobo was made himself a home there for a while alongside the railroad track. But otherwise, there wasn't anything there. And I think the train stopped running a little bit before I was finished high school in '54, and I think maybe the trains had stopped running by then, but they hadn't started tearing. They might have started tearing up the tracks a little bit. But anyway, it's quite different now. You've got a whole lot of places, one right after the other down there, and some of them pretty impressive sized buildings. And I think there's a big chunk of the assessed value of the town of Ledyard is right along the Anoco Road, because there's some people that are hard up, but other people have got loads of money and they really pay everything really high for the land along the lake. But anyway, so I remember when I was born in '36, if you can imagine anything that long ago, but the Second World War came along with '41, and you weren't supposed to drive very far just for fun, so we didn't use the cottage a whole lot until '45, the end of the war. So I was 9 years old, and I could remember things from 9 years old. You can probably remember quite a lot. I remember train summit that we go about 2 times a day usually, and it might have been some diesel, but mostly steam, I think. And the diesel it's more fuel efficient and a whole lot less maintenance, because they had to kind of tear down and rebuild the steam every once in a while, because they get caked with minerals on the inside. That would really had to tear it down to practically nothing. But anyway, so there's economic advantages of diesel, but the steam is a whole lot more interesting. And I think there was mostly steam when I was little, and of course we put pennies on the tracks and the train would come along and squish them. And but then also for the station in Aurora, I don't know, I was there not really frequently, but I remember at least once I went with my dad, and he went to get some merchandise for the hardware store, took it directly from the railroad car and his truck. And then there was a time when I forgot how old, but with my 2 Simkin grandparents, got on the train, and we got on the 3 of us got on the train in Aurora and went to Ithaca. I think we switched in Ithaca, maybe we might have gone to Black Diamond for a while. But anyway, we went down to visit my aunt and her family on Long Island, all by train, and then by train we went from there to the western suburb of Philadelphia to visit my uncle and his family, and back home all on a train. But it was just kind of interesting. I don't forget the details of it. I guess I wasn't real old. But I have memories of the train station in Aurora pretty well.
A few years ago, there was apparently a plan in place to have a hiking trail from south into the county to the north end on the old EI tracks. And it was completed between Cato and Fairhaven, I know, because I backed it 2 or 3 times. And it's a nice hike up through there. But I haven't heard anything about the status of the rest of it since then. Kind of fell apart by Weedsport because there used to be a bridge across the river where the railroad went, and of course they took that bridge down and that cut the trail at that point. But I don't know, is there any trail down on this end of the?
In the village of Aurora, there was one, partially still there, I guess, with several.
Well, there's
homeowners,
a place.
Wouldn't involve them, they wouldn't allow it for people to walk through their property, so it's not, they're just, it's dispersed around the area there in the village.
There's a hiking trail that goes from, if you go into Auburn on Dunning Avenue, and I think it goes to Shoemaker's, and I think that was a railroad bed.
Yeah. I remember up farther north, Jane and I and our son, this must have been 15 years ago, we walked part of that trail farther north. The big thing I remember about it was the mosquitoes or something terrible.
Yeah, there's a swamp up north
Yeah.
there, but it's very interesting. It's kind of wild country up through there.
Pete, do you have anything more that you wanted to say about your collection over here?
Well, no, I don't think so. Marilyn,
Yes.
I got a little bit I can tell you.
See, I knew it would come out before the end.
I hope I don't get too long-winded. But everybody, I assume a lot of people around here used to know Roy A. Tuttle. Well, you know, he had his fingers in a lot of things. Well, he was on a school board, and one of the things he used to get into was we had to fill the coal bin over here to the school. We had to go down to Aurora with the dump trucks back underneath the railroad tracks. They had a special thing there for Aurora at the steam plant to dump the cars, railroad cars, of coal. And it'd be cold in the wintertime, and we had a heck of a job getting the coal out of there. Sometimes be frozen in the bottom. It'd take us about 2 days to fill that hopper over here to the school. And when you come out of there, you was kind of black. You just have to shovel it all back up in and everything. And then he took and had the machinery business down here about a mile south. Cockshuck, New Holland, Oliver, all that. A lot of the machinery used to come in down to Aurora on a flat car. Well, we used to have to go down, take it off, bring it up here to the shop and stuff. Because Glenn used to call us up down there and say, hey, you got a load of machinery down here, So we'd have to go down and pick it up. Well, we had a real problem one day and stuff, was we had one of the first self-propelled combines come in down there. Well, there was no loading dock or anything down there. And the flat car was quite high. So we had to come back up here, but in order to we tried to get them to ship it back to Auburn, where there was a dock that could unload. And they said, no, it's got to go back to Brantford, Canada, to be reshipped and rerouted to come back to Auburn. They just couldn't take it up out of here and take it to Auburn. They had to go clear back to Brantford, Canada. We'd have to refuse it. So Roy said, no, we ain't going to refuse it and stuff. We got to unload it down here. We unloaded it after a while and stuff. It took us a while to do and stuff, but we got it unloaded. Things and when we used to take and get haywire down there, go down there and on a hot day try to carry them big 100-pound boxes out, on a truck, load them out. And then also he was in with the Hugo producers. Well, when the packing plant was down here before it burned, we used to have to go down and take out what's called hamper boxes. They were bushel baskets, but they were narrow at the bottom and flared at the top. They're different than a regular bushel basket, of the day and stuff. They were a tapered box or bushel basket. We used to have to take them, and they used to fill them cars right full of these boxes. We used to have to take them out, put them on a truck, bring them up there to the packing house, take them up, put them upstairs in the packing house so they could drop them down to fill them with beans. Let's see, what else was there onto it? Oh, hay. We baled hay and stuff, and he used to have those little stickers. You can see them out the Ward O'Hare Museum now, where you used to stick in a bale of hay with a weight onto them and everything. We used to take those weight onto them and everything, and that's what I used to have to do when I was a kid, stick them in the bale when I was weighing them out. We used to take them down to King Ferry Station and ship them out on cars. So it's, that's just a few of them around.
Yeah, well, I hope people will write down some of these memories, or, so that we can keep them. Rosie's written a lot, that's in one of the books around here and different things. Mary, I hope you'll write an article or something. I've been listening, you know a lot about the local trains and.
Just about that, from Ithaca to Auburn on the east side of Cuba Lake.
Yeah.
That's all I know about it.
But anything like that, please, that's the charge for this museum is to preserve some of these memories and things.
When did your father start with the railroad?
1923.
And where would be the first place he worked out of?
I don't know the very first place he worked, but I know he worked all over.
At the different stations?
Yeah, at the different stations, because he just got settled in one and somebody bumped him. And he had to go to another.
So does that mean you moved a lot?
No, we
Or you could
didn't.
maintain?
No, we didn't move. We stayed right here, Mother and I, and we lived at the house at the foot of the hill at Atwaters,
And that shows you, one of the trailers with you as a little girl.
Yeah, and Dad bought that little house trailer, and he'd pull it to wherever he was stationed, and.
So you were camping years and years ago?
He'd come home on the weekend, or we'd go to visit him on the train. We had to go on the train, we didn't drive, but the one that I remember is Fairhaven. I loved to go to Fairhaven because the beach was there, and they had the neatest 5 and 10 cent store. And they had boxes of little crayons, and I can remember those little crayons. I always had to have a new box of crayons when I worked at Fairhaven.
Was that the farthest way, you think?
No, I don't think so.
It's the end of the line, no?
He was-
Lake Ontario's right.
You can't go
Yeah,
much further.
but he was at Victory and, just all those stations, Lavana and Aurora and Green Springs and Auburn and Ithaca and East Ithaca. I remember him being there especially. I think he was at East Ithaca in 1958 when we had all that snow. And Tompkins County always plowed their roads better than Cuba County. So last time he'd walk from Lake Ridge out to where we live, which is right next door to us, Yeah, so he had a lot of experiences on
Marilyn, while you have a big group here, I want to know if I'm crazy about something.
Yes.
I can remember in high school, at King Ferry at the high school, it seemed to me on top of the bookcases, there was a piece of the ferry boat. Does anybody remember that? Or am I nuts?
No, I think you're right, but I couldn't swear to it.
Remember the big wood bookcases?
My grandmother, I was actually on the ferry boat when it burned.
I know that my mother fought hard to get all the trophies, the basketball trophies and everything, taken over to the firehouse. But I never knew what happened to the piece of the ferry boat. And it might have been sold off in the auction.
There's a small piece, I think, right over Bob's head.
I'll let it fall on you.
In the records room. Yeah. Isn't that a
Take a
piece
look
of
and
the
see if
ferry
that's
boat,
it.
Bob?
Yeah, I think about one the other day, I remember that scene.
You got book, yes.
Okay.
It's only that one.
So, nobody has to leave or anything, but I think we've shared a lot of memories, and, you might have an idea of who could give you more of what you're specifically looking for this morning, and we'll put some food out, look at the things. They're gonna be up all month. We're open all day, 10 to 4, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or.
Sometimes later, you're
I
right.
drive by here and Vicky's
burning the midnight oil.
So, look around, visit with people, have something to eat. And please write down anything. Like Dale, you've got a ton of information that we'd love to get recorded. And Mary and everybody.
Some of us are kind of lazy about writing stuff, but it's easier to talk. So
Well-
I think we're getting recorded visually, but maybe there's sound too.
Oh, yeah.
And so it'd be nice to put that into print and somebody could listen and type. But
Okay.
also there's things you can use nowadays, the speech recognition, so you can have them in your computer write it down for you.
Okay.
So it'd be nice to have both the words and the visual stuff available in some kind of a, I don't know, DVD or something, I don't know, someday.
All right, so we're working on it. We need the ideas. Roberta is the president of the Genoa Historical Association. Vicki practically lives here. Bill scans pictures. Pete's on the board. He does programs. There's just people that are here a lot. So we're trying to make this accessible and interesting for what people would like to see it used for.
Or if you need to come and we're not open, or you just call and somebody will arrange to be here.
We have
Pretty flexible.
We have a bunch of programs coming up, not all specific dates, but Sunday, our program, this coming Sunday, we're having the Steam Boiler Works are doing old time music. That's at the community center, and hopefully we'll get some donations that'll go toward the piano repair. We've talked to Paul about looking at the piano that's over there.
Cool, we should have known it already.
Ideally, it's a player piano that we would love to find somebody that reconditions a player piano for a reasonable price, or wants to take it on as a project or something. That's an ultimate goal that we would like to do. We've got a paranormal investigation program coming up in April. We've got the Hagans doing Irish music in March. There's a list of all the things that on the board over there. Or check our website. We love to have the turnouts that we've had for the last few. And you're the people that are interested and make it. We'll organize some training programs with speakers, and if we don't have your contact number, please leave it, put it right in the book, and we'll call you if there's something coming up on trains. So Tribunes are over there, whatever. Gay, can you think of anything?
I'm out.
There's Bob, he's our treasurer, he's out there crying over all the money that he's gonna have to spend on his programs. So please mingle and ask anything.
Just last word, thank you on our behalf for all of you who make all this possible and preserve history. This is wonderful. I'm not originally from this area, but every area has its own history, and it's so nice when people appreciate the history they have here and do their best to preserve it. So thank you from all of us to all of you.
Thanks. Mingle, we'll put the cookies out where they're more accessible or whatever. And don't forget our one-room schoolhouse if you haven't seen that too. We're kind of proud of that. And a records room and whatever. So, okay?